All right, good evening, everyone, and all of you online. And just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question online, you can raise your hand. There's a little symbol next to your name, and we'll get you on there. And I think I can make Aaron a panelist and then a host. Let me see. I'm going to promote panelist. And then I think I can make you a co-host. Do you want Aaron the co-host of this meeting? Yes. Okay. So you're now a co-host. You thought you were getting it easy.
All right, let me know what I have to do.
No, just pay attention. All right. So before I begin, I just wanted to check in, see if anyone had any questions from last week. And I know some of you online as well invited. We were discussing the 5 powers. So this is the 4th point of the 7-point mind training, which is the 5 powers. So that's 7 points, 4th point, 5 powers. We love charts and numbers. And but the 5 powers is really a synthesis of practice for a single lifetime. It's how we can incorporate all of our practices into this path of awakening a single lifetime. So a really practical way of integrating the tools and teachings that we receive from whatever tradition. So really valuable. And we went through the first 3 last week, and we'll dabble into the last 2 and we'll tie them all together. But did want to just check and see. Anyone any questions before we launched in? All right, well, I think we're good then. If we were to really take advantage of this path, when you sit here and take a little time, there's preliminary practice, these preliminary, not preparatory, preliminary practices, which I like to call an accurate assessment of my current situation. To just take a little reflection that right now we have a rare and precious human rebirth. Right now, all the causes and conditions are ripened. We have the faculties to engage in practice. We have the teachings available. We have unbroken lineage of teachings. We have um, today some teachings that we can access that are just amazing. I mean, I can pull up the Dalai Lama on YouTube. Like, wow. We have these resources. We have this life. We have all the conditions to wake up right now. And we won't have it forever. It'll come and it will go. Which bears the question, what am I doing with it? What am I doing with it? Am I just thinking that, okay, when I get older, I'll go do that retreat. When I get older, I'll go study with so-and-so. And these 4 thoughts that turn our mind are this accurate assessment that really light a fire, that says, I have the rare and precious human rebirth right now in this very lifetime, teachings, teachers, a path, everything's available. I even have an interest, and I'm here at a Dharma center. I'm here. I don't know how long I'll have it, right? This day will come, this day will go, this life will come, this life will go. I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. No one does. And I can forget that and plan things in the future. And what if we really, understood that I don't know if my next breath or my next life will come first, And so we reflect on that. And the third thought is what I find the most empowering of just reality. And that is this idea of karma, that I'm pretty much a prisoner of my habits and tendencies. I'm pretty much a prisoner of my karmic imprints, right? My conditioning. You know, um, Anyone who's ever tried to go cold turkey and change a habit real quick finds out pretty easy. Yeah, I can't do that so well. I can make that list of all the things to do to improve my life, and then I can put that list in the drawer somewhere, and maybe I'll dig it out next year. And changing my habits, changing some of my conditioning uh, can be really challenging. If we look at karma, well, that's one way that karma manifests is the habits and tendencies that I create. Well, those tend to be the way I wire myself. Now we've got all the science of neuroplasticity and our neural pathways and our biology and our DNA, and these are expressions of our karma, expressions of what is arising from how I've lived my lives and how I live this life, which creates these tendencies and habits and habitual ways of seeing things and people and how I label them and what response I have. And I'm kind of a prisoner of that. I can want to be different. I can decide I want to be a patient, loving, kind person today. And I might find out 3 hours from now I'm not so patient, kind, or loving. I want to be a better husband, and suddenly I'm not. I want to be a better parent, and I'm not. So if we look at this, we start to recognize that to a big degree, we're a prisoner of our habits, our conditioning, and this third point says uh, that this is malleable, it's changeable. I'm a prisoner of my karma, but who's creating it? I am. Wow. It's not dependent on you. Don't have to act right for me to change. It's amazing. I don't need the right car, the right job, the right situation. I'm actually the person who has the key to unlock my prison. It's like, wow. So here I am. I've got the Dharma, I've got the key, I've got the life. And with this understanding of karma is by cultivating wholesome activities, by combining merit and wisdom, by um, altering my activities and my attitudes and my thoughts, I can start literally rewiring biologically my brain, my genetics, the gene expression can change. All that can change. They can watch this now. It's just scientifically, and you don't even have to be a Buddhist to believe any of that. I can meditate more or change my attitudes or thoughts, and they can measure my gene expression can change. That can actually be done in an 8-hour meditation session with proficient meditators. They can notice a difference in gene expression. So there's nothing Buddhist or multiple lifetimes about that. It's we're malleable, and I can change even my wiring. I've got the key to unlock my own prison. So I've got this rare and precious life. I've got all the resources. I don't know how long I'll have it. How I live it when I have it is what matters. What's going to matter at the time of death is how I lived it. What's the karma I've created? What are the conditions I'm ripening for this experience I'm having? And then the fourth thought is this real simple one, is a reminder that if I don't do anything about it, I'm going to stay a prisoner of my karmic imprints. I can be handed a key. I could want happiness and well-being. I could want to not suffer. And I can leave the key on the floor. Or I can pick it up. And I can start utilizing it. So these four thoughts are designed to remind us of this rare and precious opportunity that we have right now. Right now. And in this lifetime, I can choose to decorate my samsara, or I can choose to eliminate it. And therein lies these 5 powers, choosing to eliminate it. And these 5 powers are skillful methods to incorporate the motivation, desire, and skillful means to transform my life. First one, just recap, is the resolve that every day that I wake up, I'm going to engage in these 4 thoughts. I'm going to remember what a gift this is. I'm going to remember I have this gift. I'm going to remember how many causes and conditions gave rise for me to have this opportunity right now. I'm going to take some time to reflect on that. And I'm going to remember that I don't have much time. So I'm going to have a resolve not to waste this life. I'm going to have a resolve to really engage in this rare and precious human rebirth, to cultivate my highest potentials, to work to free myself and others from suffering, and really have that firm resolve. And that resolve comes from reminding myself, making it real visceral. And having awakened, we talked last week about the idea of having, even a reminder right by the bedside, a little quote maybe to remind you woke up today. What are you going to do today? Something likes to say, how wonderful it is we did not die last night. And we're here. And a reminder of that. And to start shifting your mind right away. Wow. When I get out of bed, putting my feet into a floor, into a day that will never come again. It's a good habit for me. And then take a little time before we get busy to remember the gift and to set this intention of resolve. And then the second power is familiarity, to become familiar with. So creating habits that we repeat, that we have some redundancy with, that we really become familiar with. Becoming familiar with our meditation posture is one thing, right? We become familiar with it. Become familiar with the practices of cultivating, and I would say the starting point, wholesome behaviors. And to become familiar with that, and becoming familiar with it is not just doing good things. Becoming familiar with it is to become intrinsically aware of how good it feels, my experience of doing a good thing. It's a very different experience than just doing the next thing that's good. What if we remembered and tasted what it felt like, what that felt like to help another human being, what it felt like to do something healthy for myself, what it felt like to resist doing something unhealthy for myself. All too often, those are flashes. Oh, that felt good. Next. But to become familiar with the experience, become familiar with what I'm doing. How often are we familiar with what we're doing? It's a pretty rare thing, because there's always something else we're doing with our mind, Tenzin Palma, like it, she said, this idea of that whatever you're doing, make that the most important thing you're doing. Wow, like I'm really going to be curious about what I'm doing right now, who I'm talking to, what I'm saying. I'm washing the dishes, if I'm taking a walk, being there. How often is our mind somewhere else and we're not familiar with what we're doing? To become familiar with the practices that we do that cultivate this path, to become familiar with the Dharma. Often, I still have notebooks of notes, that I wrote down very detailed. My teacher would teach every week, Geshe Gelsen up there on the far end. I have notebooks. And one day I'm going to read them, really. They're there. Years, it's in this thing, it's a cloud, they're tucked there. And, I'm going to go back, I'm going to study those, And become familiar with, I have a bookcase of Dharma material. And the thing is, not to study everything, but rather study one thing well. So these 5 powers are really good in that way. We've been doing a 7-point mind training study group on Tuesdays for, I don't know, a couple of years. I'm pretty sure nobody knows all the material yet. What would it be like to know that material? I mean, that's my goal. I want to know it inside and out. I want to be able to go right down to the 8th slogan in the 6th point, and just, this is what that is, and here's the teachings on that, and have a visceral experience of it. So to become familiar with these teachings, become familiar with what it is like to engage in wholesome activity, and to become familiar with the path. And we only do that by practicing it. We become familiar with it by doing it, by being present with it, and by repeating it. And this is a challenge because so often in our minds, once we've done something once, our mind's not very interested anymore. Oh, I read that book. I want a new book. Well, what's in that old book? Can you tell me about it? Can you give me commentary on it? Can you, I was looking at some photos the other day that were posted online. It was this incredible monk, called him Nicky. And he's one of the first Westerners. He's an abbot of a Tibetan monastery. He's an amazing being. He runs this little monastery in Moon God, where our monastery was. And his teacher is this old Tibetan Lama, this amazing Tibetan Lama. And the picture was of this old Lama bent over this text. Just texting, he's reading it, he's just focused. And it's one of the most basic texts, the Lama Rim teachings, He's just, you're sitting there thinking, how many times has he read that text? How many times has he reflected on it? How many, thousands and thousands of times. And it's fresh to him. You can just see him intently. It's this black and white photo, and he's just looking at it. That's what it's become familiar with. To really familiarize yourself with it. So one solid text, I like the 7-point mind training. There's many texts. Lama Rim's a very good text. 7 points are ones that really allow us in a very busy life to cultivate a path of awakening. So it's really fresh. And something that we can just really wrap our lives into. 8 verses of thought transformation. I mean, it's 8 verses. I'll tell you what, you become familiar with that, you're good. 8 verses. Become familiar with that. That is the path of awakening in all its entirety. What would it be like to be that familiar? You could take one verse, you can spend a month on that. So this idea of becoming familiar, which is not to rush through. It's not to, Aaron and I were just talking about this challenge in practice, right? We do these 4 thoughts. I don't know how much time I'll have, could die. I've got the key right here. The teachings are here. Let's do it. And then the Dhammas will say, kale, kale, slowly, slowly. But I might do. And so we adopt this posture of no reason to hurry, no time to waste. Don't waste your time, but don't hurry either. If you hurry, you waste time. Things unfold in its time. And so to become familiar with is to be able to adopt that familiarity with practice, the familiarity with this moment that will never come again, to have a familiarity with. I'll catch myself sometimes wanting to hurry and get my practice done in the morning. wake up early and I try to get all my practice done, and we do a meditation together at 6, so I'll have it all done before then. And then I'll remind myself as I'm sitting here doing my practice that my whole life is so I can do this practice. It's not get this done to go do that. It's I'll just remind, and it just gives me this breath. Oh, right. Everything in my life is so that I can sit here and do this now, that I get to sit here and do this sadhana practice that's been passed down through lineage after teaching all the way through all these lamas to this teaching that I have, that everything is for that. This is not to get out of the way. And it just shifts my mind. It's like, oh yeah, everything is so I can do this. And then hopefully I'm not thinking about peanut butter sandwiches. I'll get back. And so that's to become familiar with. Become familiar with the Dharma, to become familiar with wholesome activity and what that feels like. Because when we engage in that wholesome activity, that's again in this third of the four thoughts. That's how we transform our lives. That's how we create different conditions. It's how we liberate ourselves from those habits and tendencies. It's how we cultivate a path. That's how we meet teachers. That's how we create conditions to become familiar with. And then the third one. Okay, we may not get to the last two. Okay. He does this to me all the time. Is the power of the white seed. The white seed. So I have this rare and precious human rebirth. I'm resolving to make good use of it. I really recognize this opportune physical form, more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. Again, it's like the once. The once. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's like a lightning flash in the sky. Contemplate this and you will see that all worldly actions are but wind of chaff. All the stuff I spend my time on, not going to matter. Worldly actions are but wind of chaff. And night and day I must work to extract the essence of this life. Wow. And if I could remember that, have that resolution, that resolve, not resolution, resolve, become familiar with the habits and tendencies, conditions that liberate. And then recognize, and this is the power of the white seed, is that every single event in my life is an opportunity to cultivate the path of awakening. Wow. That's cultivating this way. Everything, the adversity, the challenges, well, that's how I get to really cultivate patience and wisdom and compassion. And that's when I get to notice a strong sense of self that I'm grasping to. And recognize that's really not who I am. That's when I get to question my experience. Cultivating the white seed is and it's this flourishing of an understanding that how I'm experiencing the world, how I'm experiencing the events, is an interdependent experience based on my karma, your karma, all the causes and conditions that gave rise to a moment. And all of these moments are an opportunity to gain more wisdom and merit. There's no event in my life, there's no experience in my life, there's no breath I take in my life that is not an opportunity to cultivate the path of awakening. And that white seed is that opportunity to recognize that the seed of awakening is here, and that everything I'm experiencing is an opportunity to cultivate the path of awakening, merit and wisdom, merit, spiritual merit, wholesome behaviors, ethical behaviors, and wisdom to start to see things more accurately, understand that my experience that I grab onto so firmly is not a solid experience frozen in time. It's an experience that's happening, that's fluid, that's interdependent, has a lot to do with my attitude, the way I previously lived, your attitude and the experience of a moment. And then there's a new moment that comes together. And that this is a very fluid thing that happens. It's not a frozen solid thing that stays stuck, dragging John around from moment to moment. There's no John to drag around from moment to moment. That's getting into the fourth point. Key to this third one is to recognize that everything is the opportunity to grow. Is there an event in your life that's not an opportunity to grow, including the good ones? Matter of fact, more challenging. That's the tricky business. It's a lot more motivating to grow when I'm unhappy. When I'm happy, you can only coast downhill, And so that's this white seed is so important. Tenzin Palma has this great analogy of she lived up in this made cave that she lived in for a little over 12 years up in the Himalayas, and she had this little patio where she wanted to plant a garden and have some bricks to put down, and she needed to lay down and get them flat, and there are these little flowers that would kind of peek up through there. She thought, well, I need to pull those out. They're beautiful, they're nice, they're very pleasant to look at. And then she started to dig them out, and what she found was this root system that was just massive and is clinging into the hillside. And it was just this horrific, thing to undertake. And her metaphor for that is this analogy that she uses in different ways. In the term, she describes it in different ways, but one of which is that that's what our attachments are like, the things we like, things that are beautiful. They seem so nice. What's so harmless about a little flower? Until you see the attachment, the roots, the craving, the clinging, the grasping that are within them. And when things are going really well and the things that we like, I don't work very hard at addressing the desire I have that makes me feel good. I do work pretty hard at addressing the desire I have for addictions and things that are unhealthy. But the ones that make me feel pretty good, I'm kind of like, well, it's all right. And so her analogy is that, people will ask her all the time about how to address their anger, and nobody's really asking her how to address their greed. Because I just want to satisfy those. My anger, I don't like so much. And so this becomes the work that even in joyful experiences, we have the opportunity to grow. We have the opportunity to enjoy things without attachment. To just enjoy it for the gift and all the causes and conditions that gave rise for us to have this incredible experience, this meal, this cup of hot water, and this nice cup that was given to me. It says, sow the seeds of kindness. Very nice. Just enjoy it. And if it breaks, it's not the end of the world. But I've enjoyed it while I have it to recognize the gift that it is and to appreciate instead of be attached. It's hard to appreciate anything you're attached to. So this becomes the opportunity to grow this white seed, to grow our experiences, to recognize that everything that's happening is an opportunity to grow, cultivate a path of awakening. And needless to say, we need to remind ourselves of this and keep coming back to that, because there's a lot of things in our life that do not feel like an opportunity to grow. And I may have made up that mind at 7 a.m., at 10 a.m., I am not so thrilled about growing. So it's a practice. It's a practice that we keep watering with familiarity and resolve. So I'm going to pause there just for a moment, see if anyone had any questions. We have a big group online, so got our virtual Sangha as well as our physical one here. Okay. Then, so with these five powers that we apply, we've got resolve, we have familiarity, and then we become familiar with the opportunity of this path of awakening, this white seed that we flourish. And often it refers to the third point and 7 point, which is transforming adversity to the path, difficulties to the path. But as I mentioned, it's much more than that. It's even the things that are quite wonderful, which then lends to the fourth, which is an all-encompassing practice, which will describe, maybe with a little time left, we'll describe that a bit, and then we'll go in more deeply in the next session, is the power of abandonment. Abandoning this grasping of the sense of self and self-cherishing attitude, the abandoning of that. And I'm using this one description. There's another text where he really talks about abhorrence, really have an abhorrence for samsara, sort of visceral. Like I really have no desire to stay trapped in prison. But this text that we're using is much more of the lines of abandoning a grasping of a sense of self and others, and reifying people, things, and events in a particular way, just constantly learning to see more accurately. So we're really cultivating wisdom, right? That's what liberates. The whole prison is built on misperception. The key is wisdom. Just recognize our true nature, recognize the nature of things, recognize how we fill in these labels. And the labels are temporary and impermanent, and they come and they go, and they serve a purpose. They're not who people are. The events, whether we label them good or bad, is a very subjective experience. And they are always just coming together. No thing is any one thing. And that's something we can get to intellectually, but to really experience that, wow. I mean, we can pull up anybody in our mind and we kind of think we know them. I know so-and-so, they're like this, right? They're this kind of person. They're a funny person, except for when they're not funny. They're a pretty patient person, except when they're not patient. And we start to notice that this person I try to pin down as being this way or that way, well, there are other ways. And sometimes they're not that way at all. And neither am I. Sometimes I'm patient, sometimes not so much. And then start to understand that the labels that I start hanging on myself of this kind of person or that kind of person, well, they never capture me. And sometimes I'm not that person. And neither is anyone else. We're all coming together moment to moment based on habits and conditioning and the experience that we're having together. But you're not the same person you were 10 years ago. Neither am I. And I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow. There are going to be some consistencies, but there's not anything solid there. And so this is the practice of realizing that. Realizing that how I'm experiencing you has a lot to do with me. Not everything, but a lot. You're bringing something to the party. Hopefully some popcorn. I've been on this popcorn thing lately. It's better than banana splits, right? For you, maybe. I mean, corn. Nutritional yeast. It even has the word nutritional in it. It's got to be good for you, right?
It's been good banana splits. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I love Coke. Yeah. Last night, I was so. I went home. I was thinking about popcorn, nutrition, all that. And I got home, and the popcorn maker that we have, set it all up, got it all ready. Opened the cupboard, and there's no popcorn. And I was like, oh. And I saw the remains. Somebody had made some. I was like, okay, no popcorn. I was pretty good with that. I flirted with the idea of going out to City Market or something. Didn't do it. I'm good. No problem. Let go. I'm sitting there, and then Dawson comes downstairs, and he starts looking at the popcorn machine. I'm like, oh, man, there's no popcorn. And he pulls out like these 2 bags out of the cupboard. We had some popcorn. But, just watching the mind stream of those things of how can you appreciate something as it comes and as it goes? And what a difference, between, oh, I'd really like that. Okay, but it's not there. And then it does come. And then, wow, I loved that popcorn later. But to appreciate and grasp. So it was just this real subtle thing I was watching with my mind yesterday. It's like, the ebb and flow. And the experience here becomes an understanding of ultimately the difference between desire and a need. How to appreciate something that you might enjoy, and how do I appreciate something when it's not available. So understanding this abandonment, abandoning the grasping and the story that we might make up. For example, damn kids ate all the popcorn. Yeah, had it already. Blah blah blah. Turns out it wasn't even them who made it. Laura did earlier. So, yeah. We can make up a story, and this is a simple thing, popcorn, but how often do we, when something doesn't go our way, have a big story about that? How someone did it this way and they did just to get, whatever, and how inconsiderate they are, or this or that. And that whole story of discontent is only existent in my mind. May or may not have any relevance to somebody else's experience at all, even what they were doing or why they were doing it. I've discovered in my lifetime I'm not a very good mind reader. I've been told to avoid it. So this practice then, which we'll tap into a little more deeply in our next time, is to start abandoning, what we're really abandoning is misperception. We're abandoning misperception. That's a practice. And then last one is really cultivating these virtuous mental states that nurture this path of awakening, sometimes called prayer. So we're about at we are 1 minute left here. Last chance, anyone online with a question or clarity, or anyone here?
I have a question around the white seed.
Uh-huh.
Seen as one's mind and motivation and intention for an action is heavy weights of what that karmically will be. Would a practice be to set intention before many activities during the day, try to be attentive to the action with that intention in mind, and then dedicate throughout the day and do that as many times as one can? Or is it more of in the morning, live throughout the day, and then dedication at night? I mean, do you have thoughts around that?
Yes, and if you didn't hear online, they're just talking about how we nurture this white seed, and if we think of it in the sense, and Aaron was saying, is it better to just set this intention in the day, go throughout your day, than have a big dedication at night. And if you think about cultivating this merit and this wisdom, this seed of awakening that's within you, your Buddha nature, that you're growing it. And yeah, I love the analogy of a seed, that we're growing it, we're tending to it, we're caring for it, we're fertilizing it. And should we tend to this throughout the day, maybe make dedications constantly, like something good happens and I dedicate that for the benefit of all beings. And may I can, as I engage in the day, really keep doing that throughout the day, or just wait into the evening, because our practices teach us to cultivate a virtuous mind state, to maintain it during the day, to dedicate in the evening. And the practices, the more the better. So throughout the day is a real nice tending to. Um, there's a great story of, ah, I'm going, and maybe it's Atisha. No, I think Lama Tsongkhapa or Atisha, one of the two, uh, is the idea that when the moment a disturbing attitude arises, endangering self or others, firmly confront and avert it. In other words, any unwholesome activity, he would instantly apply the four opponent powers. He didn't wait till the evening. Like, he would stop, he'd get down, do prostrations, just like right there, just, and you just keep doing that. So tending to it. So attending to it during the day is fine. But I'll, always maintain reasonableness with all this. There's always this foundational balance between um, engaging in this worldly endeavors that we engage in, but they don't need to be worldly. They can be the experience of awakening, and maintaining that view, uh, that, in down times and pause times, dedicate some prayer. And we can nurture it throughout the day. We don't want to waste time like that. Don't need to wait. Might not be around in the evening. Yeah. Or you might be tired. It happens to me sometimes. Best of intentions. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a little time to dedicate while we are alive the merit and the wisdom we have accumulated here today and through our lifetimes and our time here together. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we've accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes. Let's dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, find their awakening. May we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to become familiar with this path of awakening, to engage in it fully, to recognize our own Buddha nature, to be free of suffering, so we can truly help all sentient beings. And may we also dedicate this merit and wisdom to the long life of all the spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions who are authentically teaching a path of awakening. May they live long, may their teachings flourish.